Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Veil background information. We're doing a culture video and we're still on the subject of the Veil television, and we're doing about serials like soap operas and stuff on Veil television. So as it's a culture video, that means I give you a brief quote and then I just talk about the culture in the Veil. It's literally for my fictional universe and how it works, so it's different yet similar to our world. So hopefully you'll find it interesting, but it's perfectly understandable if you don't want to listen to it. But let's get into it. You know, this is probably the longest running soap opera in the Vale. It's simply called it's simply called Eternal Affairs, and it's riveting. You've never seen such a piss take of vampire society, such salacious behaviour, not to mention how it keeps up to date with the time. So you can watch from start to thus far and see how they condemn the actions of their ancestors. Of course, for a soap opera, it starts off in a historical period where the family are under the second vampire king, so it's semi-historical, but written as a soap and great. I love how wicked they are. A quote from Reciprocity. Serials and soaps are some of the longest running things on television, often designed to produce at least 3 episodes a day, with enough bulk of episodes produced at a time to have specials at weekends or double episodes on Fridays. They're divided between those that are short at half an hour and sit in the 5 p.m. spot, or the 7 p.m. spot that are an hour long. Over the years, they've covered social matters to help teach people to the more absurd ideas of turning characters into angels, let alone alien encounters. They were always partially grounded in reality, and some of them have more secure and longer dynasties than the vampire nobles at times, with names that are far more well known, and their ridiculous exploits and affairs and business problems are often hilarious. Some in the Vale muse that they're all based loosely upon the vampire nobles anyway, and so soaps have always been able to poke fun at the noble elite without even needing to worry about getting told off because they're considered so unreal it isn't a problem. Now, where they differ from the bigger dramas is simply because of the fact that where the big dramas are designed to get out a point and make the audience gasp and respond, the soaps and serials stick to just the events the soaps and serials stick to just the events of everyday life, going into slightly absurd regions. It's designed to It's designed to entertain, not to teach, not always to shock, although there are always some kind of shocking event, and always to celebrate high points and low points going on in the world. Of course, there have been the ridiculous aspects, the unexpected twins meeting after being separated, suddenly learning on deathbeds that their parent was actually an infamous serial killer, let alone curious points like alien abduction, demonic possession, of course, angels having given them a holy message, not to mention fairground rides exploding, terrorist attacks, and freak weather. They are beloved for the absurdity, but also because we are introduced to characters that we will grow to hate or love, and well, it's not always so simple. The eldest one in the Vale was, like most of the Vale television, French in its creation, but it was actually created for a very different reason, supposedly being about a family of diplomats within the Vale in Morocco. It was designed for the public to get an idea of life for diplomats and in other countries. It was not supposed to be a serial or a soap opera, but it was a nice simple story of characters that were shapeshifters and getting on with difficult issues of understanding local customs, religions, and bouncing between their Western ideas and those of North Africa. It was actually commissioned by the Volturi clan to try and poke a finger towards the North African nobles, but the way they kept tourists as tourists and not letting them get about the way they kept tourists as tourists and not letting them get to see what was really happening in their region of the Vale. So slowly and surely, the Volturi clan fed the writers to introduce scenarios that would put their rivals in a very unpleasant expression. And whenever these situations happened, the viewership went up. Eventually, they expanded the cast to encompass a family supposedly linked to the North African nobles, and well, they were using this to develop scenarios that the nobles would not approve happening to them and show off their bad side. But this created something unexpected. Everyone wanted to write these kinds of stories, not about these ambassadors or their like, but about vampires or about other species, and some were far more humorous than they intended to be. One of the most popular that only lasted a decade, though, that only lasted a decade through the 70s, was a Thai series that was titled The Colour of Money, and dealt with a shaman that was trying to navigate the world beyond the veil and old traditions that meant the veil beings were getting through. Though it was almost a sitcom with how hilarious things used to happen, it became a soap opera when they learnt more and more about the figure's family and then were introduced to the family of monsters that were just trying to live their lives, but for the shaman bothering them. It became really enjoyable, and everyone was loving the monstrous characters and the demons rather than the shaman that was slowly being shown to be the problem maker he was. About the same time, a big series started in Britain to make a point about the vampires being worthless in the country and loosely based off the Vilmore. Called Eternal Affairs, the series has yet to end and has focused on the ruling vampire family, their offshoot families as they develop, the families of the servants in their employ. It became highly addictive and is still the most popular thing on the television because in quick half-an-hour bites, with a special hour-long episode on Saturday, they have developed from being a medieval lord fighting the local creatures to a family with money and blood running out. It's moved with the times, and the werewolf characters that had been the bottom rung at the start are now the local elected officials in the story, showing the way the wheels turn. It is a series that keeps up with the developments in the Vale, and certainly they were looking to the Viper King Malvolio for all the latest developments regarding Vale lore. However, it's considered taboo amongst many of the vampires to watch it, and thus for the younger generations it's become even more real to see what other beings live like as they have watched the nobles in this series collapse. Then there is the most infamous serial soap of all, with all the affairs, people being cursed by werewolves and turned by vampires, eaten by monsters, and possessed by demons imaginable. Where some might watch it from outside the veil and consider it a sort of twisted black comedy in the veil, it is probably the most trashy and hilariously soap going on. Titled Under the Moon, it is a mixed production with the language in each episode changing with magic so that it appeals to anyone turning it on. But it contains a real mix of families that live in one particular neighbourhood. This place looks vaguely like it might be in Australia, but it goes from incidents where it starts normal with teenagers complaining about how they can't believe someone's bouncing between partners, to that figure getting jumped on an evening jog by a werewolf and half eaten only to turn. It always catches its audience by surprise, and there have been many great actors emerging from within it, and the Vale has enjoyed it thoroughly. There are other soaps, and there are the telenovelas that are always much more about love affairs and family politics that sits well in the Vale universe. But with the exception that supernatural is natural within the Vale, soaps are rather more enjoyable in the Vale, but are also ridiculous as always. Thank you for listening.